Hello, everybody. This is Nora from Coaches Across Continents. Please let me know if you can hear me by typing into the chat box. Excellent. Thank you, Brian. All right. I am joined by my companion, Mark Gabriel, and we're going to be co-facilitating this webinar for you today. Thank you for being here. We're coming to you both from Latin America. I'm in Colombia, and I think Mark is in Ecuador, but he'll tell you. You'll be hearing from him shortly, but first I will introduce what we're going to be discussing today. And as you can see on the screen, self-directed learning with Coaches Across Continents. We know some of you, several of you have probably come across this with us on field, or you will soon if you've not been on field with us yet. But we're going to take you through some questions. We're going to pose lots of questions today, and we want to hear from you as always. And we're going to take you through some of CAC's beliefs around self-directed learning. We will also be sharing some examples that we've learned from our partners around the world, some examples from our curriculum, and the various aspects of our methodology that we employ to create self-directed learning culture on the field. And then, and most importantly, we're going to talk at the end about what you can do now and how we can support you. So hopefully that's clear for everybody, and as we get going, I think it'll become more and more clear. And very important, we want to hear from you. So we want to share your experiences. So again, as we're talking, Mark and myself, we love to have you type in any questions or comments, and then of course when we ask you questions, please feel free to type in some of your experiences or some of the challenges that you've faced or some of the successes that you've had with regard to self-directed learning or the questions that we're posing. And there will be some moments of silence because we don't want our voices to interfere with your thought processes, and that's totally okay. So expect some moments where it's a little bit quiet and maybe a little bit awkward, but we're totally cool with that. If there are no questions before we continue, I'm going to pass it off to Mark, who's going to start with the first question. So take it away.
Hello, good morning everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening. Can everybody hear me? Please write yes, or hello, or you are amazing on the right if you can. Awesome, cool, thank you. Alright, so as Nora has mentioned, I would like to start with a question, and we would like to discuss about what are some of your past experiences in school or with your past education. So this question is saying, what was your experience like in school when you were younger or in other educational setups? So please take a minute to think about that and respond in the chat box. And as Nora mentioned, there will be silences, and that is totally okay. It is better to have your responses rather than only listening to my thoughts and ideas. And if you have questions, you can also type that into the right so I can clarify if need be. So just again, the question is, what were your experiences like when you were in school? How did you feel during your experience? What was your relationship with the teachers, with the administration? How do you think the learning experience was in general? And I would love to see some answers. Nothing would make me happier than a full chat box. Thank you very much. So we have a fun experience, and my experience was like no freedom of expressing my ideas. Thank you, Lorik. If you don't mind, I would love for you to expand on that. And how did that happen? How did you have no freedom of expressing your ideas? And thank you, Benny. for also responding. And thank you, Vincent, for saying no talk back culture with our teachers. Benny, also, just like I asked Lorik, if you would like to expand on that, that would be great. And thank you. Some more answers. Please keep them coming. We'd love for all 11 participants to respond. That would make me so happy. Francis is also responding. So we have no freedom of expressing ideas, no talk back, which also is another form of telling the children, well, rather be silent. Teacher-centered, as Francis mentioned. And Abu also mentioned the teacher relationship. So with our answers, we have a lot of teacher relationships being maybe a bit higher than the students, with no talk back, no expression of ideas, a bullying feeling even. And Paul, why do you feel shy and afraid? Who made you feel shy and afraid, or what environment or setting made you feel shy and afraid? Or if anybody else felt the same, I would love to hear that. Why did you feel shy and afraid or nervous or anything else? Okay. Yeah, I have also experienced something much like Lorik, with the idea of it's all in the books. Everything you need to know is just in the book in front of you. And I think that's an experience many of us have had as well. And thank you, Paul. And so with these responses, I would like to move to the next slide. Thank you, Benny, again. And now we will discuss about a different experience. And what was your experience on field with CAC? And as Nora mentioned, I know a few of you have not had the on-field experience yet, but those of you that have, if you could elaborate on your on-field experience, thinking about, again, how did you feel? How was your relationship with the teachers, or in this case, it would be the program leaders of CAC, and so on. So same question, but now about CAC and your experience on field. Thank you, Francis. We will change that very shortly next month. Thank you for some responses. And again, I would love for you to elaborate on how it was a free space to express your ideas. Because you, or Lorik just mentioned earlier, you did not feel the same in your school. So I'm wondering, what was the difference? Anybody else have responses they would like to share? Okay, good point. So there's not one correct answer in CAC. And we do believe that is a big part of making people not feel shy and afraid, as was mentioned earlier, but being able to create a space in which people are able to share and not feel someone will say, no, that is wrong, or no, why would you think that, and just putting them down. And I think that is a big part of what we do in making people feel comfortable and equal on the field. And again, Abu feels the same. So this is, as does Benny. So it seems like many people on the field have had a similar experience of being able to express yourselves and have your own answers, as we have read in their comments. And then in the last slide, many of y'all also stated a little bit of the opposite, of maybe your voices were being silenced from either the administration or the structure of the schooling. And so with this, I would like to move to the next slide. And with this, we will talk about the most important part of the learning experience, is how does it impact you? So now we can look back and think about our experience on field, in our schools, and think about how did that impact our lives, or now think about how is it impacting the kids that are currently in schools that you have mentioned, or are going through experiences you have mentioned. So what are the impacts for individuals of the learning experiences in the schools, in your communities? And I know I just said a lot, so if you have questions, please, please ask. Oops, sorry, did not mean to do that. Okay. So I'll repeat one more time. What kind of impact did the learning experience you had in school have on your life? Or what kind of actions or traits did it encourage? So for example, to give some clarity, when I was in school, as Nora just mentioned, it's a better example, we said shy and afraid. So maybe in your school, if it was as mentioned that there's no talk back experience, then maybe you're shy to share your answers or afraid to use your voice. Are there any other examples of qualities or traits or things that you felt during your school experience and still affect you or will affect kids in the same way? And shy and afraid is a great example for one. Thank you, Francis and Benny. First, I would like to focus on the experience in schools, and then we will talk about the SDL experience as well. So do you have any ideas of what, or any thoughts of your experience when you were in school, of traits, qualities, thoughts that it brings upon you? And if not, it's okay, we can move on. And also think about for communities. So do as I say was the way of teaching, and how does this affect a community as a whole? So if your entire community has this idea, what will the future be like? Or how will that change or affect the future of the community? And if the question is confusing, please let me know. If it is not confusing, please share some responses. As Lorik mentioned, there is no wrong answer. You can share anything you believe. So I'm seeing a lot of responses for the SDL experiences, so we can move on to that. I've read a lot of working as a team, having the idea that people can think freely, versus what Vincent mentioned of saying do not allow us to think, and so that could be a difference in the two styles. And again, I would like to encourage us, if we think, Vincent mentioned teachers do not say but allow us to think, like they do not allow you to think, versus SDL, you are saying they do allow you to think. What differences do you think this would bring out in a person? So Francis says, never questioning. How could that impact your community if you never question your community, or never question how you think or what you believe? Yeah, you can definitely lack confidence. That's huge. And lacking confidence can lead to a lot of different things. Any other thoughts or examples? Yeah, Benny, that's a great point. And I think that's a big difference between the two, and I believe Nora will elaborate on that a bit in the next slide. So I will actually move to the next slide for Nora to do so. Thank you very much for your responses. Keep them coming.
All right, thank you, Mark. Some great responses coming in. Thanks as well from my end. It's really interesting always to see the interaction and some of the similar responses we see from different countries around the world. So now we're going to move on to discussing SEL culture and how we create SEL culture on the field. So really some of the specifics, the tools that we have, and the methods that we have to create environments for self-directed learning. So as always, before we dive into what we do at CAC, we would love to hear some examples from you and what you've used in your communities to create self-directed learning environments. Yeah, so FGM is female genital mutilation. So that's one of the traditions that is practiced in several communities around the world. And if we never question those traditions, sometimes we can never move to more healthy, safe environments. We'll talk a little bit about traditions in one of the examples that we have later on, but great point. So again, any examples that you have of using SEL, self-directed learning methodology, in your communities? Maybe it's a game from curriculum, maybe it's something that you've done on the field to facilitate a game, maybe it's something that's happened in the office or at school, with your team and your organization. Any examples that you have of self-directed learning in your community? Excellent. We love to see that CAC games are being used in training. Thank you. Football for wash drills. What are some specific games, if you don't mind sharing? If you can think of one off the top of your head, or if you can think of something that happens in a game that you think is connected with self-directed learning. Because there are several games, as we say often, football in and of itself and sport in and of itself does not necessarily lead to self-directed learning. Same as with education and with school, like we've already talked about. In community meetings, we develop ideas and resolutions together. Excellent. So we're listening to other people's ideas, and we're not just dictating. Everyone having a voice. Fantastic. We love hearing voices at CAC. Excellent. Any other examples that we have of games or of things that happen during the games? Or beyond the games, of course. And back to what I was saying about football in general, often with the traditional style of playing, the emphasized aspect is the competition. And when we have so much competition, it's very difficult to have possibilities for self-directed learning. And we'll talk a bit more about that with some of the examples. Allowing the children to play. Yeah, so playing, just giving the opportunity to play to all children is a great example of providing them with the opportunity to direct their own learning. Questioning our mentality is fantastic, yeah. So a lot of our games dig deep into some social issues, and we can question things about our communities and about our environments. And that's, for us at least, that's a big part of how we view self-directed learning. Great, thank you for contributing. As we move forward, we'll share a few game examples from our curriculum, and we'll give you opportunities to connect that with self-directed learning. And we'll also talk through a bit more about how we at CAC create the environments where self-directed learning can thrive and can live, and everyone can have the chance to direct their own learning, how they want to learn, what they want to learn, what manner they want to learn it. Allowing youngsters to give ideas and solutions to various problems, fantastic. Yeah, so we'll see that again in some of the examples that we have coming up. And we'll also share some examples that we've seen from other partners around the world. I know in India we have some partners who created their own curriculum to talk about different issues and even sometimes about school subjects. So an example is a group has created, Slum Soccer has created curriculum to discuss and to address learning mathematics, and that's a fantastic example of self-directed learning in a different form. We have another group in South Africa that has adapted several of our games to talk about some of the specific issues that exist in South Africa around race and racial justice. So they've adapted our games to work with different communities in South Africa to try to overcome some of the barriers of the apartheid system. So that's another great example of SDL, is taking what we can offer you as tools, but then making sure that they suit and they're relevant to the community. Fantastic, Lori. Yes, that's great. We know so many of our partners are adapting the games to suit the communities, and that's the goal for us. That's absolutely the goal. Yeah, as teachers, we're constantly learning, and I think that's one of the effects and impacts of self-directed learning culture, is that there's no authority, there's no hierarchy. We're all, hopefully, if we're doing our job, we're on the same level, and we're learning just as much, if not more, from the people that we're working with on our teams and our organizations and our schools, as they might be learning from us. Awesome. In Chile, they created a game to discuss preservation of water. Fantastic. All right, great. As we move forward again, we're going to hear some more examples and share some from our curriculum. So I'm going to, so some of these games you know, but I'm going to hand it back to Mark. He'll take you through 2 games, and then I'll take you through a third. And again, some of you might know these games, but really think about how these games contribute to self-directed learning culture.
Alrighty, so with this game up, I would like everyone to have Elvis's last comment in mind. As a teacher, I give them a situation and they have to solve it themselves. So I will quickly go over the very basics of the game, and then we will discuss how this has to do with self-directed learning. As you see in the picture, everybody is in pairs, and they are to find cones on the field and simply jump over the cone. And that's really it. One of the rules is that the partners must be touching at all times, and they both must jump over the cone together. So with this in mind, as Elvis has said, and as you can see for some sample discussion questions and such, we want to talk, how does this game create a self-directed learning environment? So first I would like to turn it to you and ask everybody, how do you feel this game could create a self-directed learning environment, and then we can discuss it together. And if you would like to know more details, of course you can read some of the game rules rather than me just reading it out loud. Awesome, Lorik. They should find a solution themselves. How could we push them to do that as the moderator or the facilitator of the game? Or quite simply, we could just ask, as the Lord touched to. Totally, Benny. We will do that on the next slide, so we will save that comment for the next slide. But I gave them a situation. But exactly as you mentioned, giving them a situation, and they are coming up with solutions. And of course, they have their own choice. They can do as they choose. And what I've liked with Lorik and Benny's answer and Francis's is them choosing and them finding their own solutions. And us asking questions, exactly. Giving directions, but not the solution. And that is a huge thing in self-directed learning, and this game is a great example. Of course, we could tell them, jump over as many cones as you want or can, but that's not the point. The point is to have them thinking. So as Lorik mentioned, you can say, how can you jump over the cones? And talking about different styles of jumping. And then we can stop the game and again ask them, what is another way of jumping over the cones? And now they are the ones doing all of the critical thinking and not just the teachers standing there and telling them what to do. And as I believe Benny mentioned in the last slide with Nora about SDL learning, he said, allow ideas and solutions to various problems. And this is another game that is exactly that. There's so many different solutions. Every pair can have a different solution. And by asking them to find solutions, they are able to think on their own and be creative and have confidence in their own solutions. Yeah, exactly. 2 legs or 1 leg, and have them starting to think of different ideas. You can even push them that they must do it, or encourage them they must do a different activity than the others. And so now they can't just copy somebody, but they have to push their imagination a little further. And this also would help with shy and afraid, which was mentioned before. If the teacher or the facilitator or moderator is asking them questions and now they are creating their own answers and their own solutions, maybe we can help with the shy and afraid to start slipping away, and maybe they have a little more confidence and they're having a little more fun and they're feeling more comfortable because now their voice is what is leading the game and leading their actions rather than just the teachers. And yeah, of course, more solutions. There's so many solutions, and with that, we can continue with their creativity. Awesome, thank you very much. So I will move on to the next game, which is 95% football. And with the same theme, I want us to think about how does this game incorporate self-directed learning, or how could we incorporate self-directed learning into the game. So for those not familiar, it is a football match with no football, which sounds pretty crazy because it is, but the way it works is that whoever has the ball has the hand on their head, and that signifies that you have the ball. If an opponent touches you when you have the ball, they would then have the ball and now put their hand on their head. And the way you can pass is by communicating to your other teammates. And this could be by name, this could be by number. Of course, they can decide. It is their own thought process. And to score, you would run through the goal, much like the B player is doing, and the yellow line is showing B running through the goal. First, again, I will ask, in this game, how does this game encourage self-directed learning? And earlier, Benny had mentioned that he gave them a situation, and they had to come up with their own solution of how to get out of it. So again, just posing a problem rather than giving an answer, and now giving them the chance to create the answer. And yeah, thank you, Elvis. This game, well, any of the games, again, so many mistakes will happen. And with SDL, it's one of the toughest things, I believe, is allowing for those mistakes to happen. Because the more voice that you give to the kids, maybe some things won't go well. But it's also important to know that's okay. Because as long as the kids are active, engaged, having fun, and learning, which they can do from their mistakes, it's no problem. So it's something that we need to think about as teachers, of how okay are we with things not going perfectly. Awesome, Lorik. So playing this game all the time and still problems arise. And so what happens when it's not easy and when they do have problems? As Lorik said, they come up with strategies. And so again, it's not the teacher giving them the answer, but they get to talk with each other and get to strategize, problem solve, conflict prevention, all of those things all in one game by the teacher stepping out and allowing them to have to adapt with each other and create solutions. Another great part of this game is that it talks a lot about self-regulation. So if you step back and do not ref the game, now people are saying, no, I had the ball, he had the ball, your team had 2 balls, that's not a goal, we have it. And now so many problems start coming up between teammates, between the 2 teams, and this is a great opportunity to have them figure out how to communicate with each other and how to solve these problems, not just with your own team, but with the team you're playing against. How can you guys move past this issue and continue playing and continue having fun? And of course, that transcends well past the football pitch. As Benny said, they learn fair play. So they learn how to trust each other, how to maybe not cheat, because when you cheat, it stops the game and everybody gets upset. So giving them more power for the rules is also very important. And as Peter said, when you step back, they have to communicate. They have to figure it out on their own. Awesome. Thank you very much for your responses. I'll move on to the next one, and Nora will again talk about another game. And same idea, just thinking about SDL throughout the game.
Thank you, Mark. I also love the idea of redefining what we think of perfect and going well as coaches, and really letting go of that control over the space, and really making sure that we're passing off those decision-making roles to the whole group, and really kind of moving forward collectively and redefining success, redefining what is going well. And maybe for me at least, when I'm facilitating, making mistakes is part of that. For me, if there are mistakes, we're going well still. So I think that's an interesting thing to think of when we look at our language and the words that we're using. This game, as you see, is a bit more complicated. There's lots of words on the screen. It's one of our Ask for Choice games. Some of you I know have come into contact with Ask for Choice. And I'll quickly explain how the game is played, and then we can talk again about what are some opportunities for self-directed learning. And I know some of you might be looking at the time. We're just getting towards the end, so we're almost done. Probably just maybe 5 to 10 more minutes. So this game, there are 4 squares, as you can see in the picture, and lots of progressions happen during this activity. So we start with a quick warm-up where maybe if I'm facilitating, I'll ask the players to jog around, and when they get into one of the squares, shout something, share something that they love to do. So we're jogging around, we get into a square. I love to dance, I love to sleep, I love to play football, I love to go to school maybe sometimes. And then we'll keep going with that for a couple of minutes, and we'll have some fun, and we'll share our voices. And then we'll pause, rest, because maybe we've just run a little bit, and I'll ask for a few volunteers. And the volunteers will have a cone or something that separates them, and they'll try to tag the players. But if a player is in the square, they're still yelling, what they love to do. They're sharing what they love to do, and the player with the cone cannot tag them. But if they're not in the square and the player tags them, they go off to the side, as you can see in the picture, and they're not able to then continue sharing or doing what they love. And so then we might pause again, and we might ask, what might the players represent who have the cones? The players with the cones are the ones preventing people from doing what they love. So who might that represent in the community? And so then we can have a discussion about what exists in society that prevents children or even adults from doing what they love to do. Maybe it's from going to school, maybe it's from playing. And this is one of the games where we talk a bit about, it comes up, traditions. So like we talked about with female genital mutilation earlier, that sometimes comes up as one of the things that prevents us from doing what we love to do. Other traditions as well. I know in my experiences on field, we've heard about forced marriage or early marriage. We hear about not necessarily traditions, but things that happen in society, like early pregnancy, or roles of women and girls, and not allowing them to leave the house in the afternoons or to play football because it's seen as a male sport. So here we can really talk about some of those traditions, and then we play through the progressions. So then the next progression, those taggers represent either those people or those traditions or those phenomena in society that prevent us from doing what we love. We can play another tradition, another progression, and we can ask, what is a way to solve these problems? How can we make sure that everyone has access to school, has an opportunity to play? And that's when solutions start coming in. And exactly, giving them a chance to play, so we can use a piece of equipment to demonstrate that. So I might ask for some of the solutions, and if someone says education, if someone says sharing knowledge, maybe somebody says creating opportunities, maybe I bring in a football, and the football represents those solutions. And so now we're using what's happening in the conversation and integrating that into the game. And that's a really important part of CAC, self-directed learning methodology, is listening to the contributions of the group and implementing that right away into the game. And so now we have a ball, and that ball can be passed. And if I have the ball, I am safe, because maybe I have information or I have opportunity. And I can also then pass the ball to the players who've been tagged, and they can come back into the game. So maybe the ball and information and sport and play and the things that we're doing are ways to reintegrate people who've maybe been excluded based on tradition or other factors that exist in society. Is there anything else that you notice in this game that connects with self-directed learning? Look, listen, and learn. I like these. I like the language that's coming up in the chat box. Anything else that you see in this game? Maybe you even see it in some of the prompts on the screen that connects with what we've discussed as self-directed learning, or something new that we maybe haven't discussed yet. So some of you who've been around CAC for a little bit might have noticed that our language on the PDF, on this screen, on this document, has changed a bit. So we've been very intentional to honor our desire to create self-directed learning environments with changing a bit about how we design our games on the screen. So you see we've got the organization, and then we've got sample discussion questions. So these are ideas for you and ideas for us as we're facilitating about what we can ask during the game and throughout the game while we're playing. And then we also have space for possible progressions. So just like I've mentioned several progressions, those are just ideas. You can play other types of progressions. And then the final one is adaptation notes. How might you change this game to address different themes? So I use this game often to address themes around gender inequity and gender inequalities, and because that's part of Ask for Choice, but we can also address so many different topics with this game. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, so thank you for the contributions. Definitely. Players choosing what they love to do. So it's not us dictating what those 4 squares represent, but everyone has the opportunity to share with the group about what they love to do. Indian girls can voice out to have a choice when it comes to relationship. Fantastic. Yeah, so maybe that's something that this game can focus on, is what are some traditional ideas around relationships, and how can we use this game and play to move through that. Great. Thank you. We're going to move on because we're getting through on time. But now it's an opportunity for you guys to share plans moving forward. We would love to hear about ideas you have to further create SDL culture in your communities, with your teams and your organizations. How will you do it? When will you do it? Where will you do it? We would love to hear some specific ideas because your ideas might serve people in other communities, and we might also be able to then share them with, our partners around the world. Yes, thank you, Elvis. Another great point about that last game. Choice being centered in all that we do. Fantastic. So again, if anybody wants to share some ideas about how to further create self-directed learning environments in your communities, what can you do? What will you do? When will you do it? Where will you do it? We would love to hear. And if you don't have ideas right now, feel free to share those with us at a later date. No problem. We're always available to communicate. So basic civic education. And yeah, so maybe this education doesn't only happen in schools, Kenny. Maybe it can also happen on your fields in Chituka Village. Accepting that all students are different, fantastic. So that's something in the attitude that we can adopt to create these environments, is making sure that we're aware of all the possibilities that might exist, and also aware that we might not be aware of some of the differences that students have. And so just making sure that we're open to those possibilities. Fantastic. So making sure that we have confidence and that children and participants have confidence. Or that we have trust. Yes, Elvis, I think it's that we have trust. I know confidence in French is different. Fantastic. Yeah, that we are trusting our students and our players and our participants to allow them to come to their own solutions and their own ideas. Excellent. Yeah, so asking the question. Thank you, Jorge. That's great. Asking the question, what is the community interested in? What do they want to learn? And then we can respond. That's something that we do in a lot of our trainings, listening to the participants and then planning our week and planning our year based on that. So last question from us, is there anything that CAC can do, anything more that we can do to support your work in self-directed learning? We have some resources that we share, and that obviously we share when we're on field, but we would love to support you throughout the year as well. So if there's anything else or any other ideas or any questions that you have for us that might allow us to do our jobs better for you and to serve your needs a little bit more thoroughly, more comprehensively. Some of you might have noticed, yeah, exactly. Some of you might have noticed that every month we're sharing resources, we're sharing more curriculum. So I think this is a great way to engage with our curriculum more often. And then also, hopefully, if, for example, one of the themes that we share is not relevant for your community, how can you adapt those games? Instead of just deleting each month to address the needs that are more relevant for you. So hopefully you've found value in those monthly packets, because we're going to keep sharing them. And if you, of course, have any requests on themes, we're always open to hearing ideas, because we want to make sure, because maybe your ideas and your needs are similar to others. Excellent. So that's great to hear that the question parts are useful. Fantastic. Yeah, great. Yeah, and if there's anything specific, any challenges that come up, I know with Lorik and Goals Armenia, we had a great call a few months ago about some of the challenges that they were facing in facilitating some of the curriculum and managing the groups. And it was really great for us as well to discuss these things, because that allows us to reflect and hopefully improve our ability to facilitate and share some of those challenges with other programs. So if anyone also wants to have a similar call, that's always a possibility. Great. Okay, if there's not anything else, we're going to move ahead. I'm going to pass it back to Mark. Yes, okay, thank you. During this webinar, yeah, we're going to keep having webinars. Encouraging more girls, fantastic. So that's as part of your plan for self-directed learning. I love that. When we have more variety in the people that we're working with, I think we believe there's more possibilities for different ideas and for more sharing. Okay, great. Thank you so much. This is the last slide for me. I'm going to pass it back to Mark. It's been wonderful sharing this space with you as always. I look forward to seeing many of you on fields, and I also look forward to hearing about your progress throughout the year and hopefully connecting. I'm going to pass it back to Mark to close us out. Thanks again, everybody.
Yeah, I would also like to say thank you to everybody. This would not be possible without all of you. CAC is a good organization, but it's great because of partners like you. So I really appreciate everything that you all do in your communities. And please continue doing great work, and please know that we are very sincere when we say anytime you have a question, anytime you need anything, please just let us know and we would love to help. After this webinar, we will also write a quick list of just notes that some of you have shared and maybe notes from ourselves about SDL and how you can, what you can do in SDL and such, and some of the statements that you made. This will also be recorded and also sent out as well if you guys would like to look at it again later. And thank you very much, Nora, for hosting this. Yeah, I hope to see many of you on field. And if not on field, I hope to read many emails from you guys. All the best. I hope all goes well on the field and off field. Much love. Take care.